a resilient approach.
Peace, commerce, and honest relationship with all nations is the only mission worth pursuing in life. I pray for the happiness of all the people of Europe. May peace and unity be in all the countries of Europe. May unity prevail on earth.
The COVID-19 outbreak poses immense challenges to Africa's resilience, despite the bleak forecast. However, African countries have managed to mount a concerted response to the pandemic. We are thankful to the developed countries for donating their vaccine in order to cushion the pandemic. Ensures that the coronavirus outbreak is a wake-up.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses.
Recording in progress.
Forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from our fear. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Oh Father, please forgive us too, for we know what we do. Oh Father, please forgive us too, for we know what we do.
Let all the world be united. Let all the world be free. Let all the world be united. Let all the world be free. Let all the world sing together. Sing the song of unity. Sing the song of unity. Let there be unity on earth. 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 Let there be unity on
Earth is the only known planet having life in this universe. We should respect and maintain everything we get from our Mother Earth.
Jana
How wonderful is this evening? Indeed, very beautiful. A very good evening and Jai Jagat to everyone. I welcome you all to the third day virtual program of 6th International Youth Convention on Commerce and Economics. But before we proceed, let us all seek the blessings of the Almighty. Prayer should not be regarded as a duty, which must be performed, but rather as a privilege to be enjoyed, as a rare delight that is always revealing some new beauty. A day without prayer is a day without blessing, and a life without prayer is a life without power. Let's get ready for the school prayer.
I bear witness, oh my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and worship thee. I testify at this moment to my powerlessness and to thy might, to my poverty and to thy will. There is none other God but thee, the help in peril, the self-subsisting.
It is my privilege to welcome and greet our honorable guest speakers for the evening. Professor Mohammad Muzammil, former Vice Chancellor of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University, initially known as Agra University, and Professor Gita Gandhi Kingdon, Education, Economics and International Development at UCL Institute of Education, University of London. Sir, ma'am, we are indeed honored and embraced by your presence. I extend a very warm welcome to our founders of City Montessori School, respected founder manager, Sir, Dr. Jagdish Gandhi, and founder director, ma'am, Dr. Bharti Gandhi. I even take this opportunity to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of CMS, Mr. Roshan Gandhi Faroi, Mrs. Susmita Basu, Superior Principal and Head of CSI, and Ms. Dawn Taylor, Head of School Development. It is my pleasure to welcome the respected principals of various campuses and the various participating teams. I extend a cordial welcome to the coordinator of Students' Wellbeing, Safety and Sports Department, Mrs. Aruna Gupta, Mrs. Vera Hajela, Head of Spoken English Department, CMS Alumni Association, Coordinator of ISOR High Project and Dramatics, the national and international team leaders of various teams, the event coordinators, and our esteemed judges for various competitions, definitely without whom this extravaganza would have not been possible. A very, very warm welcome to each one of you. Music speaks what cannot be expressed. It soothes the mind and gives it rest. It heals the heart and makes it whole. It flows from heaven to the soul. The true beauty of music is that it connects people. And now it is time to present before this august gathering a beautiful rendition by the students of the senior section.
We are such lights we can see in the dark. We are rockets pointing up at the stars. We are billions of beautiful hearts. And you sold us down the river too far. What about us? What about all the times we said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? We have problems that want to be solved. We are children that need to be loved. We were willing, we came when you called. But man, you fooled us, enough is enough. What about us? What about all the times we said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? What about us? What about love? What about trust? What about us? Sticks and stones, they may break these bones, but then I'll be ready. Are you ready? It's the start of us waking up. Come on. Are you ready? I'll be ready. I don't want control. I want to let go. Are you ready? Are you ready? 'Cause now it's time to let them know. What about us? What about us? What about all the times we said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? What about us? What about all the times we said you had the answers? What about love? What about trust? What about us? What about us?
That was indeed very soothing and a treat to our eyes. Now I would take this privilege to invite our respected principal, Mrs. Dipali Gautam, the convener of the 6th Virtual IYCCE 2021, to invite the guest speaker for the evening, Professor Mohammad Muzammil, former Vice Chancellor of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University.
Thank you. Good evening and Jai Jagat to one and all. It is with immense pleasure that I welcome Professor Muhammad Muzammil to our 6th International Youth Convention on Commerce and Economics. Sir, we are really grateful to you for kindly consenting to address our students virtually. Though it is virtually, but our students, let me share with you, are watching you from their homes. The links have been shared with all the participants and the students across all the campuses also, sir. Professor Muhammad Muzammil is a former Vice Chancellor of Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar University, Agra, and Vice Chancellor of Mahatma Jyotibai Phule Rohilkhand University, Bareilly, Uttar Pradesh. He has been a visiting fellow, SAVSP Queen Elizabeth House, University of Oxford, United Kingdom, member of Research Program Consortium of the Department of Education, University of Cambridge, United Kingdom, Chairman of the Committee on Policy Making for Attracting Private Investment in Higher Education in Uttar Pradesh, appointed by Government of Uttar Pradesh Department of Higher Education in 2012. Professor Muzammil delivered the convocation address in the convocation of Atish Dipankar University of Science and Technology, Dhaka, Bangladesh on 15th May 2017. He has been conferred with Saraswati Samman by the government of Uttar Pradesh on 5th September on Teachers' Day 2011 for praiseworthy contribution in higher education, and also Shikshak Shri Samman by the government of Uttar Pradesh in September 2009 in recognition of excellent contribution in higher education. We are extremely honored to have you, sir, with us today.
Thank
My
you.
heartfelt thanks to you, sir, for gracing the occasion. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
I'm very happy. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to join this International Youth Convention on Economics and Commerce. Am I audible properly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. And I'm very grateful for being taken on board to this International Convention, Youth Convention on Commerce and Economics. A few years back, also, I had this opportunity to address young students from various countries in LDA branch of CMS. Most Honorable Dr. Jagdish Gandhi ji, founder manager of the CMS world-renowned institution of the Guinness Book of Record, and Honorable Dr. Bharti Gandhi ji, founder director of the CMS, my close friend and internationally renowned scholar in economics and economics of education, Professor Gita Gandhi Kingdon, all members of the executive and management of the CMS, all senior principals, all teachers of CMS, all branches, and heads of the institutions joining this program from across the country, dear students. I'm very happy indeed to be here this evening among the young students of economics and commerce. As it was told in the beginning by the students, I have been watching this program for quite 15 minutes or so. It was very well depicted that the present economy, the status of the present economy is such that we are struggling with three problems. One, that the problem of growth remains there, but that has been severely hampered by this pandemic of COVID-19. And countries across the globe are fighting how to cope up with this pandemic. And it is the responsibility of the developed countries of the world, countries who have resources, who have vaccine, who have medicine, to share these things with those countries who do not have these in ample amount and adequate amount to serve their population. So that is the first thing which is of urgent attention at the moment when I'm addressing students in economics and commerce. The second thing is that the financing of the development issues as of now is also a big challenge, because now is the time when attention is to be given to social sector development in all countries of the world. And the students know that the social sector holds key to the development of the human individual, human capital. And people are the real wealth of a nation. Students are the real wealth of a nation. Youths are the real wealth of a nation. And that is why perhaps this is the opening sentence of that first edition of the Human Development Report, that people are the real wealth of a nation. And this pandemic has impaired that real wealth of the nation. It impaired other things in the economy and the society. In the second place, it impaired the precious human wealth. It has taken away our friends and relatives, and we are still struggling to save us from that pandemic. So how to continue to support the important social sector development, for instance, health services, for instance, education services, social security development. And that is why arrangements are being made how to support this sector expenditure. And thirdly, because now is also the time when we are concerned not only with the development of our generation, not only with the development of the present, we are also concerned with the development of our future generation, our children. And that is why this conference is being held in Glasgow, the biggest ever 26th version of the United Nations Conference of Parties, which will be addressing the issue of climate change, which will be addressing the issue of entire environment and the sustainability issue of development. And for young students who are attending this program from across the globe, I'm tempted to say that whenever we say sustainability, we are driven to the fact that whenever we are making any policy of development, we should remind ourselves what will happen to environment, what will happen to natural resources, what will happen to flora and fauna. If this development policy is going to impair the resource base, then we should revise our policy. We should rethink, and that is why we are focusing on green policy of development. And the greenness, greenery in the heart of the students is very important. That gives them inspiration. And that is why we say that every morning is today, every day is today, but every today is a new today. And that every today is a new today, we say because we need to be inspired every morning. And that is why we pray God. That is why the sun shines. That is why new flowers are blossoming. That is why new fragrance is coming from flowers, to keep us motivated, inspired. And it is to generate that inspiration and motivation across the countries that such functions are being organized. And we should thank City Montessori School of Lucknow, India, that they have organized and invited students from across the globe, so that we together learn from each other, get inspired. And the inspiration comes from several sources. And it is that inspiration which makes us generous. It is that inspiration which makes us spiritual, which makes us closer to God, which makes us of service to the mankind. And that is the motto of the City Montessori School. When we say Jai Jagat, we are not only thinking of the development of a particular region or particular person or country, we are thinking of the development of the world countries. And when we look to the subject of economics and commerce, luckily, I read this subject from high school classes, where from economics begins in Indian system of education. When we passed out class 8 and went to class 9, then there were options whether we should go for biology, botany, zoology, and those subjects, chemistry, physics, or mathematics, or we should go to social sciences, which included subjects like languages and literature, economics, geography, history, civics. Civics later on in higher education becomes political science. So I was lucky to read economics in high school classes, and then we read two papers there. One paper was Principles of Economics, and the other was Indian economy, which was giving details of how the Indian economy is enriched with natural resources, how Indian economy is enriched with mineral resources, water resources. So right from there, from 9th class in 67, 66, 67, and 67, 68, high school classes, I have in my mind, and that is the value of being early in studying any subject from the student days, that you have engraved in your mind the real picture of any particular subject. And gradually, when we moved on, other subjects started coming in. For instance, we started thinking in terms of consumption. We started thinking in terms of production. We started thinking in terms of distribution, in terms of exchange, in terms of market, in terms of competition, in terms of monopoly, in terms of role of the government, public finance. And even now, when we think of the economic challenges that the whole world is facing, that all countries of the world are facing, we try to understand again and again that there are problems which are related with growth, how to achieve growth and development, to progress. Although we are living in the best of times, despite the pandemic, we have all comforts of life and amenities of life, and nobody would like to swap his or her position 100 years before. But then the challenges that lie ahead are very daunting. And that is why the students of these subjects need to read those areas and those subjects and inculcate in them an understanding that we are here for protecting three things. We are here to protect the increasing growth of the country and making that growth inclusive, equitable. And that is why we talk not only of growth, but we talk of growth with economic justice, growth with social justice. And that is why the concern for development is not only for development alone, the concern is for inclusive development. Same is the case with education. We don't not only think in terms of expansion of education, in terms of quality of education, we also think in terms of inclusive education. All these three things, whether it is commerce, economics, or other social sciences, or what we say is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, these three dimensions are there, still there. So they are with the economy and they are also with the social sector, like education. Quantity, quality, and equality, inclusive. And that is why perhaps the government of India has brought in only last year in 2020, National Policy on Education. And the opening sentence of that National Policy on Education, it focuses on three things. It says that education is fundamental to realize the human potential. It is fundamental to realize the human potential. And this is what the City Montessori School is doing. And it is inviting students from across the globe to exchange views, to be on one platform and to be together. And that is why we can ensure not only development of any one particular country, but whole country. So this is very important, that when we say that education is fundamental to realize the full human potential, the innate abilities, it sharpens, it brings out and gives opportunity, exposure to the innate abilities within a student. And that is why this City Montessori School says that every child is potentially the light of the world. That is why, because education has that ability to bring out the full potential of the human individual. The second thing that the opening sentence is focusing is that education is fundamental to create an equitable and just society. If we wish to have an equitable society, if we wish to have a society where the distribution of income and wealth is equal or almost equal, then education is important. Because we can earn income and wealth through money, through resources, and those people, those families, those households who do not have resources, who are not the owners of physical capital or financial capital, who do not have any possession of material resources, then their human capital comes in, becomes the source of earning income and generating that income into wealth. And that this is through empowering human capital that we can create inclusive society in the world. And that is why we are focusing on the education of students in deprived countries of the world. We are focusing on the health of the students in the poorer countries, poorer nations of the world. And that is why we are focusing on sharing of wealth from developed countries to developing countries to the poorer countries, so that we can ensure their development, we can ensure their health, their education, so that we can create an equitable society or just society. David Card, who received the Nobel Prize in Economics this year only, earlier in this month of October. David Card, his 1992 article, I remember, in Journal of Political Economy from Chicago, does quality of school matter? Does quality of education matter? Very important thing. So if quality of a school is important, then good quality education will enable the student to be placed in higher income bracket, to be able to join good job. And that is why the subsequent studies of job market, labor market, and labor reforms, all these, they did follow. So this is the key to development. And that is why I salute, I congratulate all students who have joined this program, who have joined this stream of knowledge, because knowledge is something which gives you the privilege of leading a fuller, richer, and more varied life. If a student, if a youth is educated, then that youth, whether a male or female, boy or girl, will have the opportunity to lead a fuller, richer, and more varied life. And if the student doesn't have that education, opportunity of good education, then the life will not be fuller. It will be deprived. The opposite of fuller will be deprived. The opposite of richer is again wanting. And varied, opposite of varied will be monotonous. We'll be leading a life which is wanting, which is deprived, which is monotonous. But if you are gifted with education, opportunity to receive good education, and in subjects like economics and commerce, which deal with the satisfaction, utility, welfare of the human individual. And that is why it is called the Queen of Social Sciences. I read when I first read Samuelson and famous textbook, Economics, in the very preface he has written, economics is the queen of social sciences because it deals with such subjects which are so enchanting and so interesting, like growth, like development, like inflation, like inequality, like wealth, like income, like trade cycle, etc. So the first thing is that education is fundamental to realize the full potential of the human individual. The second thing, that education is fundamental to create an equitable and just society. And the third is that education is fundamental to achieve national development of any nation. And the subjects of economics and commerce, they stand for achieving development. This is science of development. Earlier, when we read in our books in high school classes, intermediate classes, that economics is the science of wealth. And we were told that this is the view, this has been the view of the classical economics beginning with Adam Smith. Wealth of Nations, the title of the book, Wealth of Nations, an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations. And gradually the focus turned from wealth to development, to social development, to empowerment of the poorer people of the country. And that is why since 1978, the World Bank has been publishing World Development Report, which is focusing on income or wealth or assets or GDP or per capita GDP as the measure of development of the countries of the world. It is ranking the countries on the basis of income, which is the outcome of development, physical development, income, GDP per capita. So countries having high per capita income are placed very high in that list. Rich countries, then intermediate countries, then poorer countries. And from 1990, the Human Development Report is being published, UNDP, United Nations Development Program, which is focusing on human development. And that is why the attention of subjects like economics and commerce, social sciences, is turning its attention to human individual, empowering human individual. And that empowerment comes through education. It comes through improved health. It comes through increasing the purchasing power of the human individual. And it also enables the person to increase the capability and then all the rest of the things along with that, which go to build human capital and ensure its role in the market, ensure its role in development process. So this is the time when we are living for the development of nations of the world. This is the time when we say that economics is not only a science of wealth, not only a science of development, is a science, is a subject of development with inclusive approach, with welfare approach, with the welfare of the entire mankind, protecting the people from impairment. And there have been catastrophe of various types earlier also. Sometimes it was just financial crisis, sometimes it is economic crisis, sometimes it is depression, sometimes it is hyperinflation. And now we have been witnessing for 2 years, or about 2 years, this pandemic. So these subjects become very important because they deal with resources, they deal with utilization of resources, they deal with rationalization of the use of resources, because resources have alternative uses. The basic definition of Robbins, that economics is the study of human behavior as a relationship between ends and means which have alternative uses, ends and means which have alternative means have alternative uses. And the United Nations is of the opinion, which is now meeting in Glasgow in climate conference of the Party 26th version. It says that that people are the means and end of development. Man is the means and end of development. Man in the generic sense, both boys and girls, men and women. It means an end of development. And that is why we are focusing on building human capital, on building education, on building the capability of the human individual, because that is the supreme service of mankind. So education is one opportunity through which we empower people, we empower our students, through which we generate capacities and we try to take out the full potential of the student. And that is why we can say and we can find out the inner light which is hidden in every student. And that is why we say that every child is potentially the light of the world. And this light of the world is of various types. It enlightens in various directions. And this is the reason that subjects like economics, science, technology, engineering, social sciences, languages, literature. The last thing that I'd like to submit before this young body of students of economics and commerce, that the total knowledge, if we divide it into two, as a student of economics, as a student of social sciences, if we divide it into two, then one is science, physical, natural science, engineering, technology in one basket. And the other side, we have languages, literature, social sciences, where there is market, commerce, and human behavior, study of human individual, where there is no laboratory work. We go to the market, we go to the field, we go for field study to read human behavior, to study human behavior. So one is science, the other is social science, arts, science and arts. Science creates new things. And arts, social sciences, commerce and economics, they create the mindset. They read human behavior and they create the mindset, preparedness, change the outlook to use that new thing for the benefit of mankind. As soon as this vaccine was invented, there was resentment and there were apprehensions that this is not good for human individual and many diseases will be aggravated. Then we came forward and we started giving advertisement, though, no, this is useful for human being. And then those advertisements were written by commerce, economics, management, market system came in and started convincing people, no, this is good for mankind. So science does its work by inventing, innovating new things. Social sciences, they create the mindset because they study human behavior. They control the market, advertisement, consumption, whether it is online, offline, all types of things, trade, business, and commerce. So they hold the supply chain, trade, world trade, and that is why they are supreme. So both these, they are not competitive to each other. They are complementary to each other. If you are a science student, salute to you. You innovate new things. If you are a student of social sciences, salute to you. You read human behavior. You will prepare the student, the people, the population to use those new things for the benefit of mankind. It has been very good joining you all. I have taken more than the allotted time. Thank you very much. My all best wishes to all, and my gratefulness to Dr. Jagdish Gandhi ji, founder manager, Honorable Bharti Gandhi ji, my close friend, co-author, and renowned scholar, Professor Gita Gandhi Kington, all the honorable members of the management committee of City Montessori School, Jayant Malviya, who has been the key person inviting me and contacted me again and again, and all the principals, all the teachers, all the students. Thank you very much. My all best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really an enlightening address, sir. You stated very correctly the efforts that have to be taken in developing the human resource, sir. And the countries need to plan and make strategies and take measures to support the social sector, mostly and the most importantly, the health and the education facilities, especially post COVID-19, sir. You have very rightly mentioned that yes, we need to sensitize our children, make them more sensitive and caring towards our environment and climate change, preserve the resources, and ensure that the resources are used judiciously to ensure and give a quality life for people today and generations to come, sir. We are extremely thankful to you for such an enriching talk, sir. Views shared by you will certainly benefit our students and motivate them to work towards creating a better world. And as said by you, making fuller, richer, and varied lives, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for taking time to talk to us. We truly appreciate the information, advice, the valuable inputs, and the expertise shared by you. Taking the evening further, I once again invite Mrs. Dipali Gautam, respected principal of Station Road campus, our mentor, our guide, to introduce the president and managing director of City Montessori School and guest speaker for today, Professor Gita Gandhi Kingdon, Chair of Education Economics and International Development, University of London.
Thank you, Shivanshu. I take pleasure in inviting Dr. Gita Gandhi Kingdon for her very valuable address. And it's an honor for us to have ma'am with us, who is also the president and the managing director of City Montessori School. Gita Gandhi Kingdon is professor at the UCL Institute of Education, University College London, where she holds the chair of Education Economics and International Development. Prior to this, she worked for 10 years as faculty at the Department of Economics, University of Oxford. She has a BSc Honours in Economics from the London School of Economics, an MSc and DPhil in Economics from the University of Oxford. Her research interests are centered in economics of education. She has researched on school effectiveness, the determinants of student achievement, the role of private and public schools, the relative effectiveness of contract and regular teachers, gender bias in the within household allocation of education expenditure, on the labor market outcomes of education, and on the political economy of education. Her research is based mostly on statistical analysis of education data sets. Based on this research, she advises governments and donor agencies such as the World Bank, European Union, and UK Department for International Development on their education-related aid to developing countries. At the national level, within India, she has been a member of the Human Resource Development Ministry's joint review missions of Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. Ma'am, it's a proud privilege to have you with us today, ma'am. And with the immense work and research that you've done in the field of economics, ma'am, I'm very sure that the students are going to greatly benefit from your talk, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for that generous introduction. May I have sharing rights? I'd like to just share some PowerPoint presentation.
Please give sharing rights to ma'am. Ma'am, it's done, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm just showing my presentation in just a moment. So, oops, I don't think you can see. Right, can you see my slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's visible. Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to talk very briefly about recent trends in economics. And, what I want to show is how important a discipline economics is. I could go through a lot of my presentation, but it would take too much time. So I hope to be very quick and it'd be at quite a rapid pace, but I'm happy to take questions at the end if there are any. So, in the first two slides, I had a kind of a, if you like, the evolution of economics over time, and Professor Muzammil has already spoken a little bit about that. But I'm going to talk about the major trends in economics in the recent times. Economics has sometimes been called the colonizing science because it kind of encroaches on other fields. Its method is such that it allows the practitioners of economics to study issues that have previously been considered the preserve of other disciplines. For example, the economics of happiness. Happiness as a subject has been something that has been studied by psychologists in the past. But today, or if you like, behavior. Behavior is also another thing that has been often been the subject of study by psychologists or sociologists or anthropologists. But today, economists look at behavior through their methods. So that's why sometimes it's now called the colonizing science. Its focus has moved away from a narrow focus on income obviously, economics as a science is meant to be avowedly about human welfare, how human welfare can be improved. Now, traditionally, welfare was. Hello? Yeah, somebody is speaking. Hey, Dwayne, can you mute? So it's avowedly a science that is meant to look at human welfare, but how is welfare defined? Traditionally, it has been quite narrowly defined through the money metric, through income or wealth. But today we see that there is a wider considerations are taken into account. It has also moved from a focus almost entirely on theory, in the sort of the period of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s even, to a field that is much more focused on empirics now, much more based on application and using data. There's been an explosion of applied economic research. This is made it possible to make policy, government policy. It could be on health, education, aviation, labor, any kind of policy. Make it more evidence-based. Instead of being made on hunch, economic analysis based on data is now enabling countries' governments and state governments to make policy based on evidence of what works and what doesn't. Another change has been, that the interest towards establishing causality, and I'll talk more about that later on. And in fact, this is the reason why the latest Nobel Prizes in economics, the one for 2019 and again the one for 2021, has gone to economists whose life's work has focused on establishing causality. So I'll talk about that in a bit. So we talked about the encroachment, already. Let's just move on to the next one. From a focus on income to wider consideration. Economists have used income as the preeminent indicator of development historically. The most important goal in national plans, is, economic growth. So this is it's thought that will allow the achievement of other goals. If a country has got higher and higher per capita income, the more resources it has, the more it'll enable that country to improve health and education and other welfare measures. And per capita GDP is probably the most awaited indicator every quarter. And it's very hawkishly watched by countries, and they compare each other, how well they're doing on this metric. There's this whole area of economics, growth accounting, and empirical growth analysis that is devoted to it. Now, alternative approaches focus more, alternative to this narrow focus on money and on per capita income, per capita GDP, gross domestic product. Alternative to that are wider focuses. So the Nobel Prize winning Indian economist, Professor Amartya Sen, who is a emeritus professor at the University of Harvard, he has proposed an approach to well-being called the capabilities approach. And this emphasizes the functional capabilities to be and to do things that are of intrinsic value for a person. For example, ability to live to an old age. You could be very rich, but if you died early, that's not going to, your perception of your welfare is going to be low if you realize your impending death at an early age. So ability to live to an old age is a capability that people value. Then engagement in economic transactions. If you're crippled, if you're disabled, you may be very rich, but you're poor in terms of capability. Ability to participate in political activity. In some countries where there is oppression, you may not have democratic rights to take part in political activities. You could be rich, but you're constrained. Your freedom is constrained, and you may have reason to value freedom. So these are capabilities that people have reason to value. And if they're poor in these, even if they're monetarily rich, they would be seen as being capability deprived. Okay. So emphasis is not so much on how human beings actually function, but also on their having the capability to function in particular ways if they so wish. So this capabilities approach stands in contrast to the conventional focus on utility and income. And you could be capability deprived in a lot of ways. For example, lack of financial resources could lead to capabilities deprivation. If you are uneducated, if you're ignorant, then you would be deprived in capabilities even if you happen to be extremely rich. If there's government oppression, again, your freedom is curtailed and therefore your capability is poor. Then the capabilities approach has inspired the creation of the United Nations Human Development Index, which is kind of an alternative metric of well-being compared to the money metric of well-being, the income, the GDP focus. So this Human Development Index, the HDI, is a popular measure which captures the freedom and multidimensionality aspects of human development. And this includes 3 different indicators: income, health, and education. And each of these 3 has been arbitrarily given an equal weight. And one can question that. And there's a big literature that also questions that and thinks about what alternative weightages could be attached or where those weights should come from. Because giving equal weightage to each of these 3 indicators, income, health, and education, implies a kind of a value judgment that these 3 things are equally important. For different people, some people may value their health very much more than their education. Others may value other things. So there's a big question there. But this capabilities approach has become influential. More recently, there is another approach to well-being, which is called the subjective well-being approach, which looks at people's self-rated happiness. This is a self-perceived response to the global happiness question, taking everything into account. How satisfied with life do you feel these days, or how happy do you feel these days? And there's a whole literature on this approach to well-being, looking at happiness. And this approach, the subjective well-being approach, could be seen as an encompassing approach that covers the income approach as well as the capabilities approach. And some people have used they've suggested that the subjective well-being approach we use to measure gross national happiness, just as we measure gross national income, that there be happiness accounting as well. And some countries have actually made progress in this direction as well. And it's being taken quite seriously, even in places like USA, for instance. They are doing quite a lot of work at the cutting edge. People like Joshua Angrist, Alan Kruger, the Nobel Prize winning Daniel Kahneman. These people are working on issues of happiness. People like, there are Canadian economists, UK economists like Andrew Oswald working on these issues. Then another trend is from moving away from theory and more towards empirics. So as I said, conventional economics has mostly been kind of a theoretical a study of theory, but I feel that not only is it dry and boring, but it is not. It is an abstraction. It's a building of some hypotheses about how the world works. But this has dramatically changed in the past about 20, 25 years as data has become available. In India alone, we have now so many household data sets. The National Sample Survey, the National Council for Applied Economic Research has its, Human Development Survey, the National Family Health Survey, and all the developing countries and developed countries were already rich in data from a little earlier on. But now even developing countries for the past 20, 25 years have data. In India, the National Sample Survey data used to be very closely guarded. Only the National Sample Survey Organization, NSSO, used to bring out reports in a journal that they call Sarvekshana. But now, as from about the year 2000 onwards, you can buy NSS data, unit level, individual level data on a CD, and you can do research on it. So its data has just become easily available, and that has spawned a huge deal of applied economic research. There's cross-section data, there's panel data. That means panel data means, on the same sample, if you have data at, let's say, multiple points in time. So, you see how temporally, how over time, outcomes change for individuals. And as I said, a lot of new research has come out of this, and it has made it possible to base government policy on evidence of what works. It doesn't mean that all the governments, but those governments that do seek it have that data available, and they are making better policy by basing it on evidence. Those countries that are still evidence-based policy, despite the availability of data, are presumably making not such good policy, because they're making policy on somebody's hunch, some minister's belief or thinking, or maybe making policy based on political experience, or policy based on ideology, rather than policy based on evidence of what is working and what is not working. A fifth trend is making evidence-based policy, which I just alluded to. So economists try to find economically rational solutions to problems. The problems are diverse. How to boost economic growth? This is one of the most important problems. How best to reduce inflation, because that erodes the value of money. How to reduce high unemployment? Do we do that by skill development, or do we do it by increasing government assistance to small, medium, and micro enterprises? Or do we do this by job creation? These are questions. This is just a very tiny set of questions in one area, which is, maybe labor economics. But there are so many other massive problems that economists have to address. And, this is why I'm hoping that, these budding economists that are sitting and listening to this session, that they will realize how important economics is as a discipline. How, if you continue in this discipline and become economists going forward, in your undergraduate degree, postgraduate degree, and if you take up jobs as economists, whether in industry, whether in government, whether in NGOs, whether in, international organizations. And by the way, India has many, many international organizations whose headquarters are now in India, or even if their headquarters are not in India, they have important local, outfits, offices in Delhi, Mumbai, etc., and including in state capitals, increasingly in state capitals like Lucknow and other state capitals. So it is very much possible to work in the capacity of an economist in so many different fields. It's not just in industry anymore. So in labor economics, an important problem is how to devise contracts in a way that increases worker effort and reduces, for example, worker absence. In economics of education, it is needed to know what school and teacher inputs raise student achievement, learning levels. For example, there's a whole massive research on the impact of reducing class size on student achievement. Because remember, reducing class size is such an expensive policy because it involves the appointment of more teachers, right? So it is a big question of policy, education policy. Should we invest more in reducing class sizes or not? So how do we make that decision? Do we make it on hunch, or do we actually look at the evidence? So it's increasingly important to make policy that is based on evidence, because there's a lot at stake. You could be wasting money, huge amount of money could be wasted, scarce money could be wasted on making wrong policies. So it can be very helpful to bring evidence to bear, and therefore to bring economists to look at the matter. Of course, as I said before, whether rational solutions are always implemented or not, there could be political compulsions for which, even if politicians know that a certain thing is the right thing to do, evidence shows that it's the right thing to do X, they may still want to do Y because of some political compulsions. That's always, the political feasibility is always overlaid on economic rationality. Now, the one thing that I did want to talk in a little bit of detail is the importance of making policy in such a, looking at evidence in such a way that you're able to attribute causality. And as I said before, the recent Nobel Prizes in economics in 2019 and again in 2021 have gone to those economists who are working precisely in the field of, generating evidence in such a way that when you look at the relationship between two things, you're able to establish causality rather than just saying that these two things are correlated. Okay, so we'll look at an example in a minute. So among policymakers, economists are in favor. For example, in the UK, every government ministry has a chief economist. For example, it could be the Ministry of Agriculture. It has a chief economist. The Transport Ministry has a chief economist. The Food and Agriculture Ministry has a chief economist. The Labor Ministry has a chief economist. Education Department has a chief economist. International Development Department of the UK government has a chief economist. So the question is, why only a chief economist? Why aren't there also a chief political scientist, or chief sociologist, or chief political science, or chief anthropologist? There isn't. There's only a chief economist. And the reason is because economics matters. Money matters. Resources matter. In any department, to achieve the goals of that government department in a way that is economically frugal and impactful. That is why they have, so economists punch above their weight. Okay. And I think that's probably part of the reason why, as Professor Muzammil was saying, economics is regarded as the queen of the social sciences. So, presumably one reason is economists do impact evaluation and cost-benefit analysis, and that helps in policy making. So, how do you know what works? How to tell whether training increases chances of employment? How to tell whether reducing pupil-teacher ratio will increase student achievement? Methods have to be able to establish not just correlation, but causality. So examples of impact evaluation studies in education in India. Now, I'm only talking about education because I happen to be an education economist. Okay, there are all kinds of economists. These are specializations in economics. And by the way, students, most of the time you may have thought of economics as a subject that talks much more about things like economic growth, inflation, monetary policy, fiscal policy, unemployment, balance of payments, right? This is the supply and demand. These are the basics of economics. But when you go to a higher level, when you go to the master's level, when you go to the PhD level, when you want to work in a particular area, what is needed is specialization. So economics has many, many, many different specializations. Labor economics, behavioral economics, and so on and so forth. There's international economics, there's transport economics, there's education economics, health economics, environmental economics. These are various different specializations in economics. Now, since I happen to be a specialist in education economics, my examples are from that. And there are so many different impact evaluation studies in education in India itself. What to speak of for all the other countries of the world. There are studies that look at the impact of giving performance-related pay, as I mentioned here, Esther Duflo and Reema Hana. This is a randomized controlled trial study. Karthik Muralidharan and Venkatesh Sundararaman has a RCT study as well on the topic of, does performance-related pay for teachers improve student learning outcomes? Then on contract teachers, there are 3 studies. On district primary education program, evaluating the impact of this government program of education. Was it impactful or not? What was the cost effectiveness of this intervention by the government? Impact evaluation of private schools, impact evaluation of midday meal scheme of the government of India. Is it the case that children who receive the midday meal have better outcomes that were intended? For example, better nutritional outcomes, better learning outcomes. So what I want to show is that economists do impact evaluation studies. They study the impact of particular policies on intended outcomes, and they cost those policies, and therefore they are able to come up with the cost effectiveness of particular policies, government policies. And then you're able to compare, government is able to see whether this policy is more cost effective than that one. And therefore, it helps government to make decisions. Increased realization of the importance of establishing causality. Now, I want to just ask you, do I still have 3-4 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Okay.
Good.
So now think of this example. As ice cream sales increase, the number of drowning deaths increases sharply. Therefore, ice cream causes drowning. Okay, do you agree with this? As ice cream sales increase, the number of drowning deaths increases sharply. This is a fact. This has been observed. As ice cream sales increase, the number of drowning deaths, increases sharply. That's a fact. In data, you can observe that. And therefore, the inference that is drawn is that ice cream causes drowning. Then sleeping with one's shoes on is strongly correlated with waking up with a headache. And that's again true in data. People who sleep with their shoes on, they wake up with a headache. And therefore, sleeping with one's shoes on causes headache. Taller people have higher earnings, and that is a fact. In data, you will be able to see that people whose height is taller, their earnings are also higher. And therefore, higher height causes higher earnings. Okay? So these are some inferences that are drawn from these things that are observed in data. So just take one example, salary and height. Height is on the horizontal axis, on the vertical axis is salary, and we see that there is this very strong positive correlation, and that regression line, if we were to estimate it, that red line, that is the regression line, that is, the best fit line. So we see that there's this very clear, strong, positive correlation between height of a person and the salary that they receive in the labor market. Salary and height. So this is what we see. Now, in reality, what we have is this. If we take the sample of females, this is the left-hand side top graph obtains. Heights are lower and salaries are also lower. And you look at the males, for the males on the right-hand side of the top, heights are higher and salaries also higher. Okay? So what is, what do we infer from this? Do we infer from this that there is a positive correlation between we know that there is a positive correlation, but does it mean that higher height causes higher salary? The answer is no. There is a third factor. This relation is spurious. When we did the bivariate relationship, we said that higher height leads to higher salary. But in fact, in reality, things look like this. Height and salary both are related with some third factor, in this case, gender. Males have higher height, they also happen to have higher salary. Females have lower height and they have lower salary. So when we don't look at what are the confounding factors, if we just look at simple correlation and draw a causal inference from that, our inference is spurious. Okay, so we have to think about what is the causal relationship, not just what is the correlation. We cannot interpret correlation as causation. And this is the fundamental problem in applied economics. Okay, how to establish causality. The same thing could be said if you're trying to talk about the relationship between class size and student achievement. Okay, so if you see a relationship like this, that the higher the class size, the lower the, you can see a negative sloped relationship. Is this really a causal relationship or is this just a correlation? Could it be that higher able children are typically put in smaller classes, and therefore, even if there wasn't any relationship between class size and student achievement, we would still get this negative relationship, because if more able children typically tend to get chosen to be put in smaller classes, then we would get this negative relationship anyway, without there being any relationship between class size and student achievement mark. So it turns out that it is very important to, I'm going to skip that previous slide because of time. So one can look at, for example, the calculation of the economic rate of return to education. Again, there's a huge literature that looks at, by how much does each extra year of education increase earnings in a way that is causal rather than just correlation. And a large number of methods exist to look at this relationship. and other relationships. Ordinary least squares method, the instrumental variables method, panel data method, randomized controlled trials method, propensity score matching methods, twin, differencing methods, and so on. Difference in better twins. And this is my last slide. The Nobel Prize in Economics in 2019 went to Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo, and Michael Kramer. Why? What for? Because they spent the previous 20 years of their life doing randomized controlled trials. They are education economists, all three of them. Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee are at MIT, and Michael Kramer is at Harvard, which is two metro stops away from both are in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they spent about 20 years of their life for many different countries, including India, Uganda, and many other countries. They did randomized controlled trials to look at, whether, for example, a school breakfast program improves children's school attendance and their learning outcomes in a causal way, to using the randomized controlled trials method. Then the 2021 Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, one half of that went to David Carr, who's an education economist. He's a labor economist, but a lot of his work is also on economics of education. So for him, the citation said that the Nobel Prize went to him for his empirical contributions to labor economics. And then his two students, Joshua Angrist and Guido Imbens, both of them, the Nobel Prize, the other half of the Nobel Prize jointly went to these two economists from MIT and Stanford for their methodological contributions to the analysis of causal relationships, because they used what are called natural experiments in order to pin down causality and to distinguish causal relationship from just correlation. So I hope that I have been able to give you an idea about why it is that economics is considered a science that is that is very important. It's a science in which a person who does it can really help to improve the condition of the people wherever it is, in whichever department and whichever area they're working in. So I hope your self-esteem as economists, as young economists, has increased. I hope very much that that is the case. And I see that the principal of this campus, I wanted to note for everybody that the principal of this campus, the great Mrs. Dipali Gautam, is herself an economist. She's a teacher of senior economics classes. And it's a great thing to share this platform with Professor Mohammad Muzammil, who has been a collaborator. Professor Muzammil and I have written a book together, and we have co-authored several articles together as well. And in fact, one of the first books I read on economics of education in India was a book by Professor Muzammil dated 1989, which was called Financing Education in India. Okay, so he is one of the foremost, or one of the earliest education economists in India. And I cited his work in my PhD in the early 1990s. I did my PhD. I cited his work, so we go back a long time. He was a South Asia visiting scholar at the University of Oxford. So for 6 months, we were together at Oxford, because I was already, working at Oxford in the economics department. He was a visiting scholar there for 6 months. So, we've had a lot to do with each other going back 3 decades. So it's a fantastic thing to share this platform with him. It's a great privilege. Thank you.
Very nice and pleasure to listen to you after a long gap.
Thank you. I'm happy to take questions if there are.
That was so lovely listening to you, ma'am, and how you said that economics has been defined narrowly in the terms of material income and wealth by Adam Smith, and now how it has changed its wider and broader concept, where it studies human behavior, how to allocate the scarce resources, satisfying the needs of everybody, maximizing the social welfare, ma'am. And very interestingly, with your slides, ma'am, you showed how data is important, be it the field of medicine, health, agriculture, studying in education, studying economic growth, cost of living, what is the importance of data. You also emphasized about making evidence-based policy, ma'am. And you are very right when you said we today the countries which have vast data that is being collected from different surveys that are being conducted today, those countries have better policies, they have better data and evidence that has been collected to base their policy on, ma'am. And the beautifully the way you explained, ma'am, the two variables on the graphs and how to establish the relationship between the two economic variables, how the inferences have to be drawn, and problems have to be analyzed, and thereby policies have to be updated and trainings have to be organized to improve the condition, be it education, health, or economy of the country. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an enlightening and a very fruitful session, ma'am. It was very stimulating and an interesting presentation given by you, ma'am. And the valuable inputs shared by you is a true blessing, ma'am, for our students, especially our commerce students who've taken up economics in their quest for greater learning, ma'am. The inputs
Thank
of your
you.
talk, I'm very sure, ma'am, would certainly benefit our children, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'd invite a few questions from the students community. So do we have any child with any question, any query?
Yes, ma'am.
Kindly
Good
unmute
evening.
yourself.
Good evening,
Abhishek.
ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead, Abhishek. Yeah. Yeah.
Ma'am, I'm Abhishek of class 12B. Ma'am, I have a question that how can the corporate social responsibility adapt to meet the needs of the country?
Yeah, I obviously, see, corporate social responsibility is basically, asking corporations, industry to give a certain percentage of its profits or its revenue for, towards discharging its social responsibility. I mean, in a sense, the corporate tax is already, something that accrues to the government as revenue, and from that revenue, the government makes, fiscal allocations. For health, for education, and for street lighting, and for the military, and for development of aviation and industry or whatever, construction of roads, etc., etc., etc. Right? So, in a sense, through corporate taxation, the government already generates, the revenue with which it does socially useful work, socially important work. But in addition to that, if a government wants to be more proactive and wants to compel industry to give some more. Some people view that as an extra taxation, as an extra burden that will drive industry away to those countries and those areas which don't impose such things. So there is a small aspect of that as well to bear in mind. That the more you impose a burden on an industry, if you look at certain countries, what they have done is, in order to develop their industry and to become a exporting nation, what they have done is they have created special economic zones in which they have given special sort of subsidies and facilitation to the industries that choose to base themselves there, and they have reduced the taxation for them and so on and so forth, in order to nurture a fledgling industry or to give fillip to an industry that they want to develop. So I think this is just one aspect of it, that corporate social responsibility, fine at one level and at another. Then another slightly more cynical aspect of it is that certain countries, they this is not something that is done publicly, but they can coerce the industry to give the money that it gives as corporate social responsibility, to give it to those social projects that the government in power happens to favor, right? So it can be used as a political tool as well in some contexts. So this is a slightly cynical view, but I'm afraid it's not an unrealistic view. It is sometimes also the case in some countries that, or in some time periods, that happens. But yes, in principle, it's a good idea that industry that makes money for itself and for its shareholders it gives something over and above taxation for the development of the social sectors and for creating what is very important, a more equitable society. We don't hear enough about equity. In Professor Muzammil's exposition, he talked a lot about that, and that is extremely important. And that is something that is not, we don't see that much effort made towards equity as we need to see. So, to the extent that corporate social responsibility money, CSR money, is not siphoned off for meeting some political ends or something like that, then I think it can play a good role to create a more just and more equitable society.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any other question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, go
Hi,
ahead.
Harshit, go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
My question for the day is, why does sometime cost effectiveness leads to cut in the salary?
Say it again, please, Harshit.
Ma'am, why does the cost effectiveness leads to cut in the salary?
Oh, cost effectiveness does not lead to a cut in the salary. Cost effectiveness means that, for example, you achieve a particular outcome, okay, at a particular cost, right? And then if you were to achieve the same outcome through a different method at a different cost, you can compare whether those two methods of achieving a given outcome, which one of these two methods is more cost effective, right? So cost effectiveness analysis helps the government to make choices. Let's take an example. Supposing your objective is that in government schools, children should be learning well. Okay, supposing that's your objective. So, as part of, let's say, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan program, the government has so many different components. There's the Mahila Samakhya program, there's the Operation Blackboard, there's the midday meal program. There are programs, a whole variety of different programs exist in order to try to help children to learn better. Now, each of these programs has its own per student cost, right? And if we could know the impact of each of these programs on the intended outcome, our intended outcome is improvement of learning levels of the children, right? If we can find the cost of delivering particular learning outcomes, then we can compare the cost effectiveness of different methods of achieving it or of different interventions that government could put in place. So that is the meaning of cost effectiveness. And cost benefit analysis is something that you will probably also have done as part of your economics course. But if not, then you will definitely do it later. Basically, that says that what is the present value of all the investments that might be made in something over a period of time. And we compare that with the stream of benefits from that investment. And we say that, okay, in today's terms, if I invest, 10 crore today and next year I have to invest another 6 crore and next year 2 crores and the final year 1 crore. This is my stream of expenditure in this investment. My stream of income is going to accrue only from 4 years afterwards, and the first year it will only be so many crore and the second year it will be so many, like that. The stream of benefits maybe goes on for 25 years, right? So how do we compare whether that investment is worth making or not? What we do is we calculate the net present value of the whole stream of all the investments over time, and we calculate the net present value of the stream of benefits that will arise from that investment over a period of 20 years, 25 years, whatever is the time period over which the benefits will accrue. For example, if you invest in somebody's education today, okay, supposing somebody is deciding, they've done an undergraduate degree, they're deciding whether to invest in 2 years of a master's degree. They know that in 2 years, to do a master's degree, it will cost me so much in the first year, so much in the second year. Okay, so 2 years worth of investment. But the stream of benefits from that 2 years worth of investment will accrue over the whole of the working life of the person, right? So how do you compare? How do you decide whether the investment of that money in 2 years of doing that course, okay, that master's course, is worth it for you or not? You will compare the cost of doing that course with the probable stream of benefits expected economic benefits that you'll get over the next 25, 30, 40 years. So you look at the net present value of both those things, and then you can decide. If the net present value of the stream of benefits is greater than the net present value of the stream of costs, then you may decide to go for it. So that's just these are some of the techniques that are used to look at the cost effectiveness of an investment.
Thank you, ma'am.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for making us aware about the role of economics in all walk of life. Your presentation was just what is needed, needed to bring about and boost a change, not only in mindset, but also in the working conditions. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Winning is fun for sure, but winning is not the only point. Wanting to win is the point, and not giving up is the fundamental point. As we come to the end of this 3-day virtual program to celebrate economics and commerce via various competitions and events, we are just left with this last one, and the most awaited one. Now, why do I call it the awaited one? Because it gives a sense of responsibility, a sense of happiness, and a sense of commitment. Yes, it is time now for prize distribution ceremony. We had competitions for 6 events, and presenting before you all is the result for the event Big 5, which was a speech competition for the senior category. And the consolation prize goes to Subhi Dwivedi of CMS Rajendra Nagar Campus 1, Lucknow. At the 3rd position, we have Soumya Dixit of Sacred Heart Convent School, Jamshedpur, Jharkhand. Second prize is won by Arya Prasoon Sinha of Springdale Senior School, Amritsar, Punjab. And the first prize is backed by SM Ayan Rizvi of Lamatnia College, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. Congratulations to all the participants and the winners. Next, we have Pin Tools, our second event, wherein students had to make financial cartoons. As cartooning is a form of expression and a creative way of communicating. The results for the event are as follows. The consolation prize is shared by 2 participants, Ayana of Springdale Senior School, Amritsar, Punjab, and Ankan Sarkar of Big English School, Jamshedpur, Jharkhand. At the 3rd position, we have Mohammad Salim from School of International Studies and Sciences and Arts, Lahore, Pakistan. The 2nd position, we have Krishna Tripathi of City Montessori School, Kanpur Road campus. And the first prize, here we have Ananya Pandey of Aditya Birla Public School, Jagdishpur, Uttar Pradesh. Heartfelt congratulations to all. Then we have B-Plan, an event to create an innovative business plan, again for the senior category. And the consolation goes to Vaishnavi Gupta and Astha Singh from Sagar Public School, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. At the 3rd prize, we have Sacred Heart Convent School from Jamshedpur, Jharkhand, being represented by Vidhi Jain and Harshada Parashar. The 2nd position stands JC Public School from Rudrapur, Uttarakhand, and the winners are Akansha Bhagat and Purvi Mehra. And the first position goes to Varnit Pandey and Ronak Singh, again from Ramatnia College, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. We now move ahead to the 4th event, Entrepreneur Expression for the junior category. And here are the results. We have consolation prize, which goes to Kavya Mishra of CMS Aliganj Campus 1, Lucknow. At the 3rd position, we have Nandini Puri from State Anand Ram Jaipuria School, Kanpur, Uttar Pradesh. The second prize goes to Ashlesha Shahi from Aditya Birla Public School, Jagdishpur, Uttar Pradesh. And the first prize is bagged by Manyata Chaturvedi of City Montessori School, Bindinagar Campus 2, Lucknow. Congratulations everyone on a very well-deserved success. Screening before you all are the results for the event Sound of Silence, an event wherein the students had to act through expressions. This one is again for the junior category. And the certificate for winning the consolation prize goes to Ramandeep, Kabir, Shauryaviz, and Shreya Gupta from Sopin School, Sector 9, Panchkula, Haryana. At the third position, we have Mananya Mehra, Suyash Chadha, Shresh Bennett, and Prachi Dhawan from Springdale Senior School, Amritsar, Punjab. The second prize is won by Ashlesha Shahi, Damhi Kashyap, Milianand, and Ritika Raj, and they are from Aditya Birla Public School, Jagdishpur, Uttar Pradesh. And the winners of the first position are Hasim Ali, Mohammad Talal Bhatt, Hassan S. Mazhar, and Ayan Malhi from School of International Studies and Sciences and Arts, Lahore, Pakistan. Congratulations to all the proud winners as well as the participating teams. And now releasing the results for the last event, Ad Guru, for junior as well as the senior category, in which the students had to advertise an eco-friendly product. The consolation prize goes to Abhishek Kumar Srivastava, Kaushiki Sahu, Tuba Khan, Raghav Agarwal, and Sukriti Shah of City Montessori School, Station Road Campus, Lucknow. At the third position, we have Harshita Sehgal, Radha Seth, Anhat Pawar, Sunandini Mehra, Mohammad Amish Azim, Manat Kohli, and Nitya Singhania from Springdale Senior School, Amritsar, Punjab. The winners of the second prize are Tehleel Fatima, Zareen Naveed, Jannat Chaudhary, Norez Asad, Ibrahim Bhatt, Sayyid Ali Akbar Zaidi, and Muhammad Ali Awan from School of International Studies in Sciences and Arts, Lahore, Pakistan, once again. And at the first position, we have Ramatniya College from Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, and the winners are Ronit Singh, Ritesh Baveja, Parth Agnihotri, Parv Johar, Varnit Pandey, Sagar Mehta, Akarya Sharma, Parth Pandey, Hitesh Tiwari, and Kush Narang. Heartiest congratulations to each one of you. And here, ladies and gentlemen, apart from these 6 events, there's a prize for a special category, a cultural presentation. And this
Thank you, Shivanshu. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make IYCCE a success. On behalf of CMS Station Road and the entire fraternity of the institution, I want to extend my sincere thanks to the Almighty God for making the event a success. This year, by grace of God, we've been able to hold IYCCE in spite of the setback caused in every sphere of life due to the pandemic. My gratitude to all the participants for sharing their opinion, very creative and innovative presentations. It was a pleasure watching and listening to your speeches and watching your case studies, children. Congratulations to each one of you for your outstanding performance. We wish you all the best for your future endeavor. I express my gratitude to all the guest speakers for their informative sessions. I'm sure it has been an enriching evening for all our students. They would have definitely benefited from the talks and the experiences shared by our eminent speakers. I thank my honorable judges who gave their valuable time in deciding the results. My heartfelt thanks to the school heads, the team leaders of the participating teams for their enthusiastic participation. I thank all my senior principals and colleagues for sparing their time to be with us. My gratitude to the management for their constant support and guidance. I express my heartfelt thanks to our founders, respected Dr. Jagdish Gandhi and Dr. Bharti Gandhi, for being the driving force behind all our efforts. My special thanks to Professor Gita Gandhi Kingdon, President and Managing Director, for her guidance and yes, for a very valuable and impactful session today. My gratitude to respected Roshan Gandhi, the Chief Executive Officer, and respected Sushmita Basu, Superior Principal, Head for School Improvement, for their guidance. I express my thanks to Mr. R.K. Singh and his team for all the technical support that they've given to us throughout the event. I thank my students and lovely parents for the support and encouragement. Finally, I would like to thank the staff of CMS Station Road campus for their unflinching efforts, support, untiring efforts at all times. Special mention to Mr. Jayant Malviya, the organizing secretary of IYCCE, for his commitment. The cultural department of our campus, the dedicated teachers of our branch for the beautiful presentation on the day of inauguration. Special mention to Mrs. Bharti Bhardwaj for that powerful World Parliament. And also Ms. Shivanshu for her excellent comparing for inaugural and prize distribution ceremony. Ms. Bharti and Ms. Taruna for conducting the online events on day 2. That was Big Fight and Entrepreneur Expressions. My gratitude to Ms. Ekta and Mr. Jain for preparing all the multimedias and the PPTs for the prize distribution and inauguration of the teams. My gratitude to each and everyone who worked behind the scene to make this event happen. Thank you and Jai Jagat, and looking forward to meet you physically in 2023, God willing, when the conditions are normal and we can host you physically in Lucknow at CMS Station Road again in 2023. Till then, goodbye, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you and Jai Jagat.
I request you all stand for the national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे अशुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तव जय गाथा। जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Record